Raise your hand. We'll call on you. Oh, down front, Kate, and then Cease.
Hi, Kevin. With Kenny, obviously he doesn't want to turn the ball over.
Right.
What do you talk to him about it? In the heat of the moment, you've got a defensive lineman in your face. Just what do you go through with those turnovers that led to touchdowns?
The two that led to touchdowns were difficult. The one that's really disappointing was ball security and fumbling. The ball just slips out of his hands running with one hand on the ball. You talk to him about that a lot. The other one being hit as you throw. That's unfortunately those are hard to coach against. What can be coached is somebody needed to get the guy down before he scored. So the two interceptions, you have one where he's hit where he throws. The other one in the end zone, the receiver fell down. And, they could have been better throws. It could have been better executed, but there were other things that happened. The biggest coaching point was ball security on the fumble. And, we talk about that and have a ball security period, after every practice.
Go here to Cease, and then Brent.
Kevin, you talked after the game about trying to get more out of your running game, and you weren't able to. When you looked over the film moving forward, what has to happen for you to get more out of that?
Well, I think there's a combination of things. Cease, I think, we tried to get more of our running game. I think we had 35 rushes, counting Kenny's 5 or 6, so 29 rushing attempts. But when you rush for 1.5 carry, there's a number of problems, whether it's scheme, we have man scheme, zone schemes, and then there's just plain old blocking people and not being able to block people. And, I said it right after the game, up front, for what we tried to do, Ole Miss did a better job up front against our offensive line. And we got whipped up front. That usually does not happen. And we challenged them, and that, it didn't work out. So the addition of Cam Clear, I thought, would help us. He did help us in the passing game a little bit more. I think he would have caught 3 balls, getting him on the field and trying to create another blocking surface. But that was tough sledding the other night, and really led to some inconsistencies offensively.
Down front here, Brent.
How would you evaluate the pace of your offense at this point? Is it similar to years past, or
What do you mean, the pace?
the pace in terms of
Time?
Kenny looking at the sidelines, things like that, and so forth?
I would say it's similar to where it's been. I don't know that. You mean snaps per second or something like that? I think it's about the same. I don't see much different from that standpoint. We've in the 2 losses we've had more plays, which is kind of different. And actually we had the ball more in time of possession this last game than the other team, than Ole Miss. But I think from a Brent, we've never really looked at our offense as how many. We're trying to snap the ball. I know a lot of people talk about it. We're trying to snap the ball in 16 seconds or 20 seconds or 24 seconds. We've never done that way. But I think the pace of play and the tempo of play, I feel like it's about the same as it's always been. I could be wrong, but I don't feel any different.
Middle left there, Zach.
Coach, what was your takeaway from the defense's performance on Saturday? Obviously, they gave up a couple of big plays, but there were times where they were playing pretty well.
I would say this, in the first half, it was kind of hit and miss. The 99-yard drive was disappointing. Had an opportunity to pin him down there. I thought, along that line, Drew Kaiser challenged him a couple weeks ago after, Arkansas because of how he performed in Dallas, and Drew really did a fine job of knocking the ball inside the 15, I think, or 10, two or three times, and really created some long fields for Ole Miss. with the exception of the 99-yard drive, that's something that we needed to pin them down there and get the ball back and get in the red zone and score some points. Second half was different, just like you said, and overall statistically better. Some things to draw on. I think we forced 8 punts Saturday. We had 13 possessions. Offensively, we forced 8 punts. Defensively, and if I'm not mistaken, we were 2 of 10 on third down conversions defensively for 20%. So there were some positives, but unfortunately, when you turn the ball over twice and 3 times or 2 for touchdowns, it makes it very, very hard to win.
Over here to the right, Gabe.
Coach, obviously Malcolm is very important, and this has got to be a very important game for him with the success and the history of what he did there 2 years ago. A, what can you tell us about his status, and B, how big of a deal would it be to get him back?
He got close enough to playing Saturday. It just, we don't ever want to put a guy out there who I think we're endangering him. And for what he does and how he does things, he wanted to play, and he probably could have played. So, but from a strength standpoint and being able to defend himself with that shoulder, it just was too risky. And do we need him? Yes. But you got to make those kind of decisions, and those personnel decisions become personal decisions in that case. So it was a little, not a little, but it was difficult for him, right before the game, and it has been for the last couple of weeks. And he started off practice yesterday right after stretching and wanted to have a word with the team, and I let him do that. So it looks to me like he's going to be ready to go this week.
Other questions back to the back here, KO?
Coach, looking forward to Alabama. They're coming off of playing an Arkansas team that you admittedly said knocked us around a little bit and beat us up a little bit. Do you think that's going to weigh on them coming as we come into Tuscaloosa?
I don't know. That's kind of how Alabama's built. So they're used to knocking people around and beating them up. I don't know. You watch the game; it was a heck of a game. Very much unlike our game with them. Close game all the way down to the end, and they were on the road, so they pulled it out. I think it was a very, very physical game for them. Obviously in the style that Arkansas plays, but Alabama's a very physical team too.
Other questions? Going light today. Back to the back, Daryl.
Could you talk a little bit about Alabama's offensive approach and their attack and how you guys will try to defend that?
Yeah, I think, you look at their approach. I was just this morning, we're looking at last year's game, and I got about 2 quarters into it, and I said, this looks nothing like what I've seen the last couple of weeks. You're always looking for different things, and their approach to the game and things that correlate, But they're a different team offensively. I think their quarterback has, he's completing in the high 60s, almost 70%. I think, and Blake Sims gives an added dimension that they haven't had, and the fact that he can move and move around. And probably shouldn't. AJ will probably be upset I said that, but that's the fact. And I'm not saying that he's a scrambler for necessarily yardage all the time, but what he has been able to do is avoid taking sacks, move around back there, and create plays with his movement to help their offensive line. And when you got Amari Cooper running around back there behind you, it's dangerous. So he's got. They're a big physical unit up front. They've got big backs and guys that can run it at you. And on the perimeter, the numbers for the receiving corps speak for itself, particularly in Amari Cooper. So, we've got to be able, again, to play good run defense and then eliminate explosive plays, which, we've gotten better at that. We gave up really not as many explosive plays. We got the touchdown pass last weekend in man coverage, good throw and catch, but certainly we're going to have to limit Alabama's explosive plays and still be better against the run.
We'll go to the left, Cease, and then Brent, and then Christie.
Kevin, coaches always talk about handling adversity. Can you talk about where you feel your team's confidence is after these 2 losses?
That's something that we talk about all the time as a team, and expectations, and whether you're winning or losing, the ability to trust the team's self-talk, coach's self-talk, the things within the building, things within the room, because. The whole coach told me, he says, you start listening to everybody else, you ain't never been that good and you ain't never been that bad. So, what you try to do is keep an even keel and be honest with where you are, and have expectations within your program, no matter what the outside expectations are. And, it's coming into this thing, nobody said this was going to be easy. This is a difficult league, and there's no doubt that, based on the last 2 weeks against the types of opponents that we're playing, we got to coach better and we got to play better, and that's our expectation within the building to win games. So, confidence, I think, is something that you don't gather overnight, and I don't think you lose it overnight. And it's something that you build, and that's who you are. And I don't see that wavering.
Okay, we'll go down front, Brent, and then Christie to the left.
Cease kind of stole my thunder there, but in terms of what happened at Alabama 2 years ago, do you see any similarities? And do you have maybe a favorite memory thinking back on that game that jumps out at you?
No, I don't know that there's similarities. We're going back. We've had 2 just great football games, in the 2 meetings that we've had, and games that went down to really the last play of the game. Either way, we won one, we lost one. So going back over there, it's a great atmosphere, a great crowd. Loud place. They've got a tremendous amount of pride in their program, and they should, with the number of national championships and the number of wins. But you get over there and you play the game. I don't know that I have one particular memory that stands out, except for being able to leave there with a smile on my face.
We'll go Christie here on the left, and then Gabe on the right.
I know you've, of course, been putting up big numbers for years, but are you at all surprised by the prevalence of the really high passing yardages around the league, or around all of college football, and do you think it's going to even get higher?
No, I'm not surprised by that. I've said many times, I think high school football has changed dramatically. The amount of 7-on-7s across the country in the state, and that are organized or sanctioned by the states have really helped. I think what you're getting is a higher IQ player now at quarterback coming out of high school, and so his ability to have been in spread offenses and handle coverages and reads and blitzes and hots instead of having to teach that as something foreign at the next level. I think that's changed, and so I think it's a combination of those 2 things. I think 7-on-7 has created a year-round football atmosphere, if you will, and then the quality of high school quarterback and their knowledge, not just their physical ability, but their knowledge of the game and how to operate in that system has helped, and so guys are more comfortable throwing the football around.
Over here to the right, Gabe.
Coach, with where this game, another thing on Tuscaloosa, but with where this game is and compounded by the fact that you guys are struggling, how much are you relying on guys that are veterans who won in that venue in Tuscaloosa this week to pull you out of it? And do you think this could be the perfect recipe to get you out of it?
Yeah, but there's always, winning helps everything. We're going to rely on guys to help us in that atmosphere. We don't have a bunch of them. You look back at that game, and on the perimeter you've got Malcolm. And defensively, there weren't a lot of those guys playing in that game. Howard Matthews had a big ball game over there 2 years ago, and but that's about it. DeShazer with the big play, but but a lot of those guys that are going to play in that defensive front there on defense weren't there, and but fortunately they've been in these games and played. This is we're down the road in this season, and they've played a lot of football, and we've been on the road quite a bit. So we're going to lean on those guys, but we're going to have our younger players also compete at a high level. With these games that we're playing, everybody's got to play, and everybody needs to play well for us to be successful.
Go to the back, Mike, right in the middle.
After week one in South Carolina, you told us that Kenny Hill was very calm, and going to that atmosphere, it didn't seem like anything to him. Through the weeks with these two losses, has his demeanor changed and has his attitude changed a little bit?
I don't think so. I think he's stayed about the same. And what happens is that attitude when you win is seen one way, and that attitude when you lose is viewed another way. So I think he stayed the same. I think the perception of him has changed.
Anything else? Suzanne, here on the left.
Hey, Kevin, follow up to Christy's question. Used to be 300 yards for a quarterback was like a big deal. Do we need to alter that benchmark, and maybe is it 400 to 500 after seeing what some of these quarterbacks are doing around the country?
I don't know. I think there's all different styles still out there, and it's, whatever style of play that you have offensively, you have the opportunity to rack up yardage and points. There's no question that the average, number of points scored in college football games has risen dramatically. It used to be, I can remember when teams had cracked the top 25. You're trying to be in the top 20, 25 in scoring, and you're around 30 points a game. That's changed dramatically. So there's whatever you do, you need to score some points now, and whether it's throwing the ball or running the ball. But there's a lot of offenses out there that are efficient, doing both and still getting 400 or 500 yards a game.
Okay, down front here, Brent. We'll wrap us up.
How much does your offense benefit from having a guy who can scramble when necessary, a dual threat type guy? And also along those lines, if you were to pinpoint one area of your offense that needs most improving at that point, what would it be?
I would say that we, in order to be consistent, we need to be able to run the ball efficiently. Does that mean that we're going to rush for 200-300 yards? I don't think that's been the case. I think we've been efficient in the past. We've had games where we're efficient. We weren't efficient the other night. You can't be efficient if you're running at 1.5 yards a carry. So, when you're up around 4 or 5 yards a carry, then you're different. And I think that puts pressure on defenses to have to change. And I think that's an area where we have to improve in our run game efficiency. What was your other question?
In terms of the running quarterback, having that kind of guy.
Yeah, Kenny showed the ability to scramble and make plays. I think he's created, he's run for a number of first downs this year. So, and we do have and have had some designed quarterback runs in the game plan. We've seen that in a different, 4 or 5 different games. So, yeah, that's okay. I think it's puts a little bit more pressure on the defense, but I think we're able to handle both styles, and the key for us is to try to do what our players are capable of doing and play to their strengths. I put it that way. So that's the effort, but it all starts up front.
Is the inability to rush, is that on the offensive line at this point?
I think you look back at that game, and like I said, I thought schematically there were some things that we could improve. I thought that that we didn't do a very good job of blocking those guys, and so we tried to run it and we couldn't. And whether it's a combination of scheme and a combination of guys not holding up front.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
And along those lines, we've talked about that and challenged our offensive line. I think they know it because we've talked with them about it, and it's something that we've put an emphasis on this, moving forward.
Thanks, Coach.
You bet.